In the stillness of the evening, later TAMs travel back to a time when Jesus taught his followers through stories filled with wisdom and love. Tonight, we, your TM, all listen to one of his most powerful teachings, the parable of the Good Samaritan. This story is about kindness, compassion, and what it truly means to love our neighbors. It began on a warm afternoon when a group of people had gathered around Jesus. They were eager to hear his teachings and learn from his wisdom. Among them was a lawyer, a man who studied the commandments and laws of God, and who was very knowledgeable about the rules and expectations of faith. He raised his hand and asked, "Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus looked at the man thoughtfully. Instead of answering directly, he invited the lawyer to reflect, asking, "What is written in the law? How do you interpret it?" The lawyer thought carefully and responded, "The law says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, TM, and love your neighbor as yourself, TM. Jesus nodded approvingly, a warm smile on his face, and said, "You have answered correctly. Do this and you will live." But the lawyer wanted to go deeper. Seeking clarity, he asked, "Who exactly is my neighbor?" It was a question that asked more than just for definitions. It sought to understand the true nature of compassion. And so, to answer, Jesus shared a story that would reveal the heart of what it means to be a true neighbor. There once was a man, Jesus began, who was traveling from Jerusalem down to Jericho. This was a dangerous journey along a rough, winding road through desert hills and rocky paths. Many people feared this road because it was often haunted by robbers and thieves. As the man traveled alone, he was attacked by a group of robbers. They took everything he had, even his clothes, and beat him severely, leaving him injured and alone by the side of the road. The people listening could feel the tension in Jesus' your TMA words, imagining the lonely road, the helpless man lying wounded, barely able to move. In their minds, they saw the Mana your TM's desperate situation, vulnerable and in need of help. Jesus continued, "As the man lay there, a priest happened to be traveling down the same road. Now a priest was someone who served in the temple, respected and honored by all. When the priest saw the injured man, he paused and looked. But instead of helping, he crossed to the other side of the road and continued on his way. The people were surprised. The priest, someone expected to act with compassion, had passed by without offering any aid. But Jesus continued. Soon after, a Levite came along. Now a Levite was also a man of faith, someone who served in the temple and was well respected. He too saw the wounded man lying by the side of the road, but he also chose to cross to the other side, hurrying past without stopping. The listeners were taken aback. Here were two men who knew Godi your Tam's commandments, who should have shown compassion, but they chose to ignore the suffering man. Jesus paused, letting the weight of the situation settle over his audience. Then, with a warm and inviting tone, he continued, "Then a Samaritan came along the road." Now, Samaritans and Jews did not get along. They came from different lands, had different customs, and a long history of distrust lay between them. But when this Samaritan saw the injured man, something stirred within him. He felt a deep compassion for the stranger lying on the ground. The people were intrigued. The idea of a Samaritan, someone seen as an outsider, showing compassion was unexpected. Jesus went on. The Samaritan did not hesitate. He knelt beside the man, carefully examining his injuries. Gently he poured oil and wine on the wounds to clean them, binding them with whatever he had. Then, with great care, he lifted the man onto his own donkey, taking him to a nearby inn where he could rest and recover. Throughout the night, the Samaritan stayed by the Mana-e Ur TSM side, checking on him, making sure he was comfortable. Jesus or TM words painted a vivid picture of the Samaritan Urtia's kindness. He continued. The next morning before leaving, the Samaritan went to the innkeeper. He took out 2 silver coins, enough to cover the Mana URTM's stay, and handed them to the innkeeper, saying, "AER, take care of him, and if you spend more, I will repay you when I return. AER Tam." The people were touched. They could feel the Samaritan TMM's compassion, his willingness to help a stranger, even at a personal cost. Jesus turned back to the lawyer and asked, "Which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers?" The lawyer understood the lesson deeply. He looked at Jesus and answered, "The one who showed him mercy." Jesus smiled warmly, nodding, and replied, "Go and do likewise." Through this parable, Jesus revealed that being a neighbor isn't a Euro-matid defined by where someone comes from or what they believe. Retelling defined by acts of compassion, kindness, and mercy. The Samaritan showed love to a stranger, crossing boundaries to help someone in need. He did not worry about being repaid or about how others might judge him. His heart was moved by compassion, and he acted with a love that was selfless and true. As the people around Jesus listened, they felt the depth of the message. Many began to understand that God URTM's love is meant to be shared with all people, not just those close to us, but especially with those in need. Jesus' Airtam's story encouraged everyone to look beyond differences, to see every person as a beloved child of God, deserving of kindness and compassion. And so the parable of the Good Samaritan became a timeless lesson. It reminded those who heard it that love is not limited by boundaries and that true compassion reaches across divides. Even in the quiet hours of the night, when we find ourselves reflecting on our own lives, this story reminds us that each small act of kindness creates a ripple of love in the world. As we lay down to sleep tonight, let the peace of this parable fill our hearts, reminding us that kindness and mercy are gifts we can offer to others every day. Just as the Good Samaritan brought comfort and healing to a stranger, we too can be bearers of peace, offering compassion wherever we go. And as we rest, we remember that we are all held in God URTM's endless love, surrounded by His kindness and care, just as He calls us to care for each other. May we drift into a gentle, restful sleep, feeling the warmth of God as our URTM's presence, and may the peace of His love carry us through the night.